Welcome to A Photographer's Life, the channel that takes you behind the curtain into the world of professional architectural photography. Join us now for an episode with some of America's premier architectural photographers. Today's broadcast comes from a recent Zoom meeting of the Association of Independent Architectural Photographers. This discussion is led by AIAP Director Alan Blakely. We hope you enjoy the show. If you do, please let us know by liking this episode and subscribing to this channel. Now, on with the show.
Welcome everybody to the August AIAP Zoom meeting. We're going to talk about some things that we might not be charging for that we possibly can, and some ways to increase our profitability. And we chatted just a little bit before we went live here, and so I'm going to throw this back to David maybe and first a little bit more background on how we got here and where we're going to go with this discussion. So David, I'm going to let you kind of continue with what you were talking to us about previous. You mentioned about you got an invoice from a drone operator about
an estimate from a drone operator.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Because over the last 2 months, I've used about 4 different drone operators from California to Seattle and Oregon. And we already talked about that in the past, like, because I'm shooting on the ground and then have the drone operator. Anyway, the drone operator out of Seattle on his estimate had a price for the drone rental for the day. And I think it was like $450. And it brought me back to these line items that Wonderful Machine has on their estimates for advertising photography, where lenses, cameras, all that so-called kit is included in their pricing. And it's like, who's bringing their tools are going to charge for these tools, but it goes back to filmmakers that charge for their high-end cameras and their lenses and their whole kits. Now, if I have to rent some special equipment, I'll charge that, but it's been kind of frustrating for me to think that some people are being able to get this pricing in other markets for some of this equipment. And I can't get it. And maybe there's some jealousy there, but some guys can get away with it, especially in the advertising market. So
yeah, and when you mentioned that to me initially, when we started talking about this topic, I thought about it, and then it occurred to me that I've had over the past 2 years so many occasions where I send an estimate to a client, and then they'll come back to me and say, well, you didn't include the fee for drone work on that. Or what's your extra charge for drone work? And after you mentioned this to me, I thought, this light went on. It's like, they're expecting me to charge them extra for drone work. And I'm not. I'm just including it. I'm showing up with the drone. I'm flying the drone as part of my regular photography. They're expecting to pay extra for it. Maybe I should be charging extra for it. This seems like something I've been missing for a number of years now. I mean, I've been flying a drone for, I don't know. I think I've had a drone for at least 10 years that I've been flying one. Probably more than that. Probably more like 15. But I've not ever separated that out as a separate charge. I've included that as in part of my creative fee, it's just as part of the photography.
Well, and yours is unique. I don't want to interrupt, but if it's included as it's your drone, I think you can add a line item on that. But I always hire a drone operator, so that's a separate line item.
Yeah,
that the drone operator, because you're having 2 photographers at that time. Okay, so I have an assistant line, and then I have the drone line. So,
yeah, and I'm wondering, if in my case, I understand the difference in your situation, but I'm wondering if in my case, since my clients are already prompting me the fact that they're expecting a different line, that maybe I should be separating that out as architectural photography and aerial photography. Because I used to do that when I had a helicopter rental. If I chartered a helicopter, I was separating the helicopter out as aerial photography. And then, the rest of my photography is architectural photography. So I got the drone and all of a sudden it got lumped all together.
I started using drones in 2020, um, and because of the extra training you need, the extra gear, the extra risk, every time you send a drone up, there's thousands of dollars going up in the air, and there's a risk that it's a little riskier than holding onto a camera. So for me, it's always an add-on, and I make it an optional add-on for my architectural work because not every architectural project is good for drone, but that way my clients can choose, and then they just say, yeah, we want to add that on. And um, it's rare for me to have, I do have, but it's rare for me to have drone only shoots. But I do have a an in-house agency here in my town in Salem, Oregon, that they'll hire me just to come and just shoot my drone. So I have a different setup with them than I do for my typical client.
Yeah, that's interesting you mentioned that because I do have one client that I do drone only um, for shooting stills and video. It's primarily these big tilt up warehouses, um, million square feet, and I wouldn't walk around them for any amount of money. So it's nice that I can just fly a drone around them. But that is a situation where I don't ever put a tripod up. So it's separately
Well,
entirely.
you were talking about that the other day. It's just a large tripod for you. Well, weren't you saying that, Alan, on some of the
Well,
shoots?
yeah, and Jack Ziggin was mentioning the same thing, and that I use my drone a lot now in a different way than I did when I first got it. When I first started flying a drone, I was kind of in the mindset of that I had been when I was flying a helicopter. Um, in and I had it too high, honestly.
I remember I had a assignment one day it's about a 4.5 hour drive from here, and I needed to get some twilight shots with the drone, and I'm driving as fast as I can to make sure I'm there on time. And then just 2 miles before the location, I get a flat tire. So that slows me down. And then when I finally get there, the sun is just going down. I just have enough time to get the drone up. And right then, a security guard drives up and says, "What are you doing here?" And I turn around and my drone is gone. And so just crashed. And so that stress of, are you going to lose your drone? Yeah, that's enough reason to charge an extra fee when you're flying it. But you know, the clients that I've been working with for years, it's hard to suddenly say from now on there's an extra fee for drone, but I just add it all up when I'm done. So
At one of our last meetings, people were saying that absolutely don't itemize the drone. Just plain when they give you the scope, which includes things that you need your drone for, just give them a total price, but don't dare itemize the fact that you're adding anything for the drone. It's just that's the price for that scope of work. I thought that was a pretty good suggestion.
Yeah, I have to agree with that philosophy. Alan and I talked about this a long time ago, and I had been using the bottom line price number as my quote, which included the scope of the work, and just give them the bottom line with the expected deliverables. Let's say it's 10 finished views. And if they wanted more, I would spell that out. That would be my only line item, would be additional views are X dollars. But we're shooting for, within the scope of the work, we're there to walk away with, the client would get X number, like 10 finished views, whether they're aerials or submarine shots, So I certainly agree that the helicopter rental is such a huge variable by the minute that would warrant a separate line item. And in the scope of your work, you can give it as an estimated amount. But of course, the bottom line is how much they charge you, and whether you mark it up or not is your business. But I really feel strongly about, especially in this day and age, all they want to know is how much and when can we have the finished work. That's really it. To spend a whole lot, I used to itemize my creative fee, licensing based on what they're licensing it for, assistant fee, mileage, scouting, hotels, the whole thing. You know what? I'm too freaking old to do that anymore. All they want to know is how much, So I take a piece of paper and in pencil, I write out all of my stuff. I line item for myself. And then I draw a line and put the total. And that's what I quote them. So if they have a question about it, like they get that bottom line number and they say, well, and it rarely happens. Why is this so much? And it's usually an oddball number with something and a few cents. And that comes out because of the mileage. And so if they want to question me about it, which I rarely have happen, I go right to my pencil on my notes and say, well, yeah, this is what I'm estimating on the mileage, and this is the assistance fees I'm going to have to pay for somebody. And even though, some people have to rent generators to light exteriors, I own my own lights, own my photography gear. Obviously, I'm not, I don't leave money on the table, I don't think. But I am not going to get old and waste more of my valuable time so some junior bean counter can question every line item. I mean, to me, it's just, I think it's shows a level of less than professional. I think it's amateurish to line item and justify. Just tell them how much it's going to cost.
But Brian, are you familiar with Wonderful Machine?
I am, and I think they are a wonderful outfit. And I think for the advertising advice and positioning of their scope of work and what everything costs and blah, 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 I think that world, the advertising world, that method is totally right in line with what has to happen. I think it's great. But I don't do that much advertising work anymore, and that's part of the reason.
Right, but some of that, because I used to do a lot more advertising work when I had a studio, but some of that advertising rates kind of need to seep over to us because they're getting a higher rate, okay? They're getting usually a higher day rate. They have these line items like you're talking about marking up. But I want to get back to this whole thing about, I like you, Brian, not giving them line items on everything. But when I talk to I'm a member of ASM, Wonderful Machine. But when I paid for a consultant at Wonderful Machine to put an estimate together for me, he does the whole pricing with the equipment, but I said, I don't want to put the pricing in. I don't want to charge for my equipment, but he does not mark up assistants. And I always mark up my assistant, okay? Because the time to put it in there, everybody marks up their employee. But Wonderful Machine, he was adamant that you don't mark up your assistant. I said, you don't mark up your assistant, but you add a line item for equipment. So we didn't agree on that, but I thought that was a little bit strange. But if you see these samples that Wonderful Machine sends out, they have the different line items from people from New York and LA, from insurance of $75 a day to $150 a day, and then obviously craft services, food, toll going over a bridge, all these things. But the whole theme today is not leaving money on the table. And back in the day, we'd make money up on film, marking up film and Polaroids, and say, okay, well, what are we going to do now? We don't have that. We're going to mark up our digital time and digital retouching. So, and again, Wonderful Machine does have that line item for images, roughly about $100 per retouched image up to 1 hour. And then above that 1 hour, it's like $100, $125. So
they're spelling it all out for you. And I think that's great in the advertising world. When you said that they are commanding higher day rates and higher fees, and that we ought to come along a little bit with what we're charging, well, you know what? I'm already there. You know, I mean, I don't get exorbitant fees, and maybe I could do better if I go through Wonderful Machine and line item all this crap. But all my stuff, everything goes into the blender to come up with the number. The research, the scouting, the licensing, the creative fee, the actual boots on the ground, however many boots you need, all that goes into the blender. The retouching, I have a good estimation of how much time it's going to take me to do these kinds of images for this type of project. I'm not going to put up there up to 1 hour. So what? Should I be penalized because I could get it done in 15 minutes? No. I'm an accomplished professional, and I'm not going to line item and nickel and dime these people about up to 1 hour. Well, I know my dusk shot that has to be the hero shot is going to take longer than an hour. So that goes into the blender. And what comes out of the blender is that bottom line number, unless you're renting helicopters. So I don't think I'm leaving money on the table. I think I'm charging fees that are commensurate with my level of experience and professionalism and creative abilities. And I used to charge, line item, it's going to be this many miles and the current gas rate and this and that. I mean, and insurance. I mean, come on, everyone's got insurance anyway. You got line item insurance. You're not going out and buying a separate policy for a shoot. Come on, who are you kidding? I don't mean to be, asshole about it, but I just disagree with line items so a bean counter can pick it apart.
Yeah, I completely agree on that, Brian. And I think in the context of this, I would have to say that if we're going to talk about things that are leaving money on the table, we ought to talk maybe about things services that we can add to our offering, not items that we can line out on an invoice. I have respect for the Wonderful Machine business model and everything like that, but I don't work in Manhattan. And so it doesn't work for me. If I were to show that kind of an invoice to, an architectural firm in Dallas or Phoenix or, wherever, they're going to look at that and think, this guy's out of his mind. To line item all these things out, and because really all they're going to compare is my price, that bottom line price, to the another guy's bottom line price. And if they have a problem with it, they're just going to say, why are you more? And I'll tell them why I'm more. It's never why are you less, it's always why are you more. So, and we can go from there. But there are some things, I mean, I guess one of the things that occurred to me as we approached this meeting was that I think drone is one of the things that we can easily add to our, that we might be leaving money on the table. And I know, David, you're not offering that personally, but for me, that's been a huge thing to add to my billing, to be able to offer that, because then that expands the scope of the photo shoot for me. And that's all profit for me. I'm not having to pay anybody else for that. I mean, aside from the initial investment in the drone, and the extra insurance that I have to carry for that drone, everything else is profit because I'm already there. And
well, Alan, you and I talked about this in the past. My business strategy is a little bit different because we have two shooters. The drone operator, like I just did a shoot up in Seattle, it was all twilight. Most of it was twilight when the drone operator was there. I'm on the ground and he's up in the air. So we have two shooters and I'm making money off of him. but we're also adding more shots. Well, I'm shooting also on the ground. He's also shooting up in the air. So we have different business models here on how to use the drone. And you've mentioned in the past that you can fit in both in the same twilight, and maybe we'll have photography Olympics sometime and see how you're shooting and see how I'm shooting,
Well,
get it
I
done.
mean,
Yeah.
there's a strategy, and um, there's no room for error. I mean, either you nail it or you don't. And if you don't nail it, then you're back at 5 o'clock in the morning to get it. And I did that 2 weeks ago in Texas, where I did not get the ground shots and the drone shots at dusk. And so I was back at 5 o'clock in the morning with the drone shooting dawn for dusk.
Question about people brought up helicopters. Why would anyone, what's the advantage to ever using a helicopter with as good as drones are these days? Why
Well,
would anyone use
if
a
I could say
helicopter?
something, I had a project over in Vancouver, Washington, where we had to get a larger footprint, and I couldn't get the drone up high enough to get, this was about 3 city blocks. I don't know, it was large. So we got the helicopter so I get up higher to get the whole footprint. We didn't do any stitching, so I needed a helicopter to get up higher.
Yeah, usually
Okay, so that's the main reason, is just to get higher?
Well,
Yeah,
one of the
nature.
one of the reasons for me.
Yeah, and the nature of the project. I mean, I had a project down at the Cape for NASA, and you can't fly a drone there. So I had to. It was a helicopter charter that had to fly down there, and so I had to have an R-44 to fly that, and just because it was not permissible to have a drone in that
But you can't have a drone, but you can have a helicopter?
Exactly.
That's weird.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a helicopter is a known target with continuous contact with air traffic control, where a drone is an unknown target, which is who knows what knuckleheads running it out there, and it's a completely different situation. There's a lot of situations like that, and I've done that over air bases and things like that as well, where it just depends on the property generally. But like David said, it also depends on the altitude that you need to be at. And I've had situations where I needed to be above 400 feet, which is the ceiling for a drone, and so the helicopter was the platform I needed to use. Not my favorite. I'd rather not be sitting on, in the back with the door off and my feet on the skid hanging out of a helicopter. I'd rather have a drone be on the ground, but sometimes it calls for it.
Talking about this bottom line number, it seems to me that drone, helicopter, whatever you need, helium balloon, whatever to get the shot, goes into the scope of the work. And it could certainly be an option if you're having to get dusk shots at nighttime instead of at 5 a.m. Because you had to go back and do it, or you couldn't get both at the same time, whatever, and you have to hire somebody else. Okay. So that's like in the scope of the work that you're going to do, you're going to include aerials for this dollar amount. And if you don't want aerials or elevated shots, whether it's drone, helicopter, or helium balloon, then there's X dollars that won't be applied to the bottom line, and you won't get charged for that, but you'll also not get those key shots. So it's up to them, and that to me is really like the only thing that I can think of that really justifies an option to the bottom line, because it's all in the scope of the work.
Yeah. One of the things too that I find that at least photographers in my local area don't charge for that I do, I think they're leaving money on the table, is scouting. I don't scout for free. And another thing is I don't travel for free. So my travel days are billable. My scouting days are billable. And I think there's a lot of photographers who just give their clients a pass on those things, and um, I don't I don't think that's reasonable, and I don't think it's ethical on the part of the client to expect that. So those are things that I'm afraid other photographers may be leaving on the table because um, I hear not often, but I do hear you're the first photographer that's ever charged us for scouting, or ever included scouting as a fee, and I think, well, yeah, welcome to my world. So that's
Well, and that brings up a good point to me. So I'm curious, if you look back through your career, was there was there a point in time where you're like, aha, or there was some decision you made, or anybody here who where you were like, that that's something I was leaving on the table and I didn't realize it at the time, but now I charge for it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, early on, when I was just working in my local market, people would say, "Well, I need you to take a look at this. Can you come on over and take a look at this project, and then give me a quotation?" And I would scout the project, and then it occurred to me, well, that's my time to scout your project, whether whether you have me shoot it or not. I'm going to charge you for it. So, or can you come over and meet with us and talk about this project? And so I started billing consultation fees. I had one client that just absolutely exploded because they got a bill for consultation time. And it was just, the conversation had to happen of, do you expect me to give away my time to consult with you on your project? And my position is I'm absolutely not going to do that. So the
Well,
consultation is
it ought to be easier for them to stomach that cost if you don't show it as a line item. It's a
yes,
it's part of the scope of the work. It included scouting, it included consulting, it included blah blah. Don't even line item that. This is how much
good
it
point.
costs to get those shots.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, Brian, because I was line iteming things at that point. And at the point where I stopped line iteming everything, all of these problems evaporated.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
So, excellent point. Um, I know that that's a business model that some of these companies insist on. And when I work with an advertising agency, which is not often, but when I do, they insist on me line iteming everything out. They want to know what my assistant cost is, my rentals and travel and every damn thing that they can think of. And then they're going to compare that, I guess, with another photographer. I don't know what they're doing, but it just seems ridiculous because at the end of the day, it's still just the bottom line.
And for those of you who don't have hair color the same as me and Alan,
Getting that, though. Getting that.
Hey, Brian, how about not much hair at all?
okay, that counts.
Yeah,
that counts. Bottom
We're
line,
in the same camp right here. Glenn and I were about the same camp, right? Yeah.
but just bottom line.
Matt, you got to take your hat off, Matt. We got to see what you got there. Yeah.
Oh, that's not fair. Yeah,
Well,
it's just that just has made life so much easier, like you say. But I do think that those are things that we ought to be lumping into that bottom line, or those, what's the walkthrough, or scouting, or the consultation time, or any time that we spend on somebody's project to get them to the finish line should be billable.
What about the licensing? I've heard you guys talk about different kind of licenses. For me, my agreement with every single one of my clients so far has been the license is you have unlimited use. You can do anything you want with my pictures forever. You paid for them. You can't do one or two things. You can't give them away to anybody else, and you can't sell them to anybody else. Otherwise, I don't care if 2 years from now you need to use it or something, you don't have to come back to me and talk about a license. So I'm just wondering, I've heard people here in this group talk about, well, you get this license for this, but then you got to pay extra for this kind of license and whatever. Anybody do complicated licensing? Am I losing it there?
I don't think you're losing it. I do the same thing. I give my architectural clients unlimited non-transferable usage. Those key words is all that I have to put in the license to make it actionable if something
Yeah,
goes awry.
exactly. The only caveat to that is if I have a client who's using it for advertising, and then that's a different license, like a manufacturer who's doing this, who's doing advertising in magazines and or broadcast, or print advertising and broadcast media primarily. Then it's a different license. I will tell you what, I had a situation here which just about put me over the edge of 2 weeks ago, where I had a major manufacturer that I've done business with for a number of years, who negotiated a license with me. It's a manufacturer who has 14 brands. They negotiated a license for all 14 brands under the umbrella of the company. And part of that agreement was that I would then dismiss or discontinue some cases that were already underway with Pixie against some of those brands, because they only had a license for one of those brands with the photography that I had done. I went and did a 10-day photo shoot, 4 locations across the country. I get back and they say, we've changed our mind. We only want the one license. So I exploded for one day. And and then I rewrote my licensing for that job and included these lines which say that it's and I can post this too, or you can put it in the chat, but the licensing may not be transferred to affiliated companies or business entities, because I got burned on this one really bad. I mean, this was a project that my bottom line billable got cut by 75% as a result of them going back on this contract that I negotiated with them. And so I added this, this clause that the license may not be transferred to affiliated companies or business entities. And that was, on the advice of counsel as well. And, but otherwise, the non-transferable, like Brian said, tends to cover it. And so I give them a perpetual license for most architectural clients, and that seems to cover it. But they transfer it to other companies anyways.
Well, this is a whole nother topic for discussion, because we've talked about this whole licensing. It's very frustrating because not everybody's on the same page. I've been to ASMP meetings, and everybody's all over the board, and people give images away. And I've done stock photography since '97, so I know a lot of. I'm not saying I know more than others, but I know a lot about licensing and so on. And that's something else where you can make extra money. But the main bottom line is don't give them away.
Exactly.
There's a lot of real estate photographers, don't get me going on that just give it away, and it's really affecting all of our businesses.
Well, and I would mention one thing too. I've become aware over this last year of kind of a trend in the market, and this bears out by some studies that I've recently seen, some empirical studies by academics about our industries in particular. and there's kind of a shift in our industry going on towards these corporations which are recruiting photographers for work for hire, and so and then they're trying to negotiate contracts with hospitality, retail, and also large architectural firms and things like that, where they will do a large number of projects on a work for hire basis. And I got one of these emails yesterday trying to recruit me into this a company that I'd never heard of before. There's some of them that I keep hearing from over and over again, but you probably have gotten these as well. But I think that's kind of where the lower end of our market I should say is headed. The entry level is kind of headed that direction. The top end is kind of getting thinner and thinner.
Well, and that's been happening for years. Like Airbnb,
Yes.
one of my buddies shoots for Airbnb. He gets pennies on the dollar basically, and it's frustrating. But you're always going to find photographers, even pretty good quality, to shoot some of these projects because they're young photographers and they're hungry.
Yeah.
I joke around saying, hey, if you put an assignment to shoot on the moon, you probably get 3 or 4 photographers up there. It's just incredible. I've been shooting since '81. There's never been a shortage. There's a glut of photographers in not most markets. I'm generalizing here, but in Portland, the Northwest, there's always been a glut. So
Yeah, there's not ever been a glut of really good photographers. I think that's that's the encouraging part of that, and those shooting great work, and so I've made a number of people really angry with me over the past few years, but they still keep coming back. They get angry, and in fact, I just had a company that said they'd never work for me again, and then the architectural firm that did the project that I'm shooting said we'll only work with him, and so the contractor that never would work with me again said, yeah, okay, we'll work with him again. And it's just because of the quality of the work. And so I think that is a really strong position to be in. If you just, I mean, I've always thought that the best creative advantage, or the best competitive advantage, is to just do good work. If you just consistently do good work. So I don't know. I got my first business license in 1980, so I'm a year ahead of David.
oh yeah, rub it in. It's okay, yeah.
But I've still got my
Yeah.
I still got the camera. So
I think attitude and personality makes a difference too. I've had some complaints about, I don't want to put other photographers, but just saying he wasn't the easiest to work with. And Alan, I know you're probably talking about licenses, but I assume your personality is pretty easy to work with.
Oh, I'm a pain in the neck. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And then there's one photographer in particular they mentioned. I'm not saying any names, of course, that all he does is emails back and forth. There's never communication, a verbal communication over the phone or whatever. And I think that's a huge asset to do. So anyway.
Yeah, I agree. And I think retention is as important as marketing. And there's just a few little things that you can do. I write handwritten thank you notes. I have it printed out with my logo on the front, little thank you cards. I write a handwritten note. To me, that's a big deal. It's a big deal if I get one. And I think that makes a difference for people. And
I put some terminology on my invoices where it's more like a paragraph of information than it is just an invoice, where I say something at the beginning about, hey, that was really fun to do this last project with you. I hope to do some more of those kind. Then have the invoice, and then at the end, it's always a pleasure to work with you guys. Keep up the good work, or I say that kind of stuff on my invoices.
I think that's really important. Yeah.
And I mean it. I mean, I wouldn't write it if I didn't mean it.
Yeah. I think people appreciate that a lot.
Too much going on in the background, but modern postcard out of San Diego. I just have these printed up, and this is what and then I just write inside the card there.
Yeah.
So that's sent those things out.
Very nice. Yeah. Any other services that we haven't talked about, there's one that we brought up in the past, and I think that's a really easy add-on, and I don't do it anymore, just because it's not fun for me, but that's headshots. That's such an easy add-on for us if we've got the ability and the inclination to offer that to people, because architectural clients in the architecture and construction, engineering, design business, they're always looking for a good headshot, because they tend to promote themselves and send out press releases and things like that. And SMPS is an avenue for that. I think if you've got a good SMPS chapter that you can align yourself with, that always helps as well, to bring in new business and to kind of stabilize the business that you do have, and people get to know you and then like you, and you can continue to see new business coming through the door.
So portraits, I think it's a great idea, environmental or in their office for the architectural firms, because is my audio working anyway? Because they might have me come in to photograph a new employee. So whatever time you come in, you're showing your face and you're talking business. So it's always advantageous to offer that. And you should never think, like, I believe I shouldn't think I'm above that. If they want me to take the wedding photo of the VP of somebody, I'm not going to do wedding photos, but I'll take portraits of the new employees. Yeah.
Yeah. One other place where I think we leave money is in multi-party licensing. Generally, the GC will have a list of subcontractors that they can easily share with us. The architect may not be as plugged into that as everybody else, but one thing the architect is plugged into are the manufacturers of the products that they've spec'd. So between the two of those, between the products that have been spec'd and also the subcontractors and consultants, we get a pretty big list if we just ask for it. And what I do is I use Pixie Set to post previews, and I will post the job, and then I will send the email link to my Pixie Set page for that project to everybody that I get, everybody on the list from the general contractor, and also everybody that I can get names and contact information from the architect. Between the two of those, I shot a high school recently, and I had 12 licensees on that project. So that one-day photo shoot becomes really profitable. It's as profitable as what I used to make in a month. So for that one day, so those kinds of things are really easy, and I think that's money left on the table if we just don't. All we need to do is ask. And finding the contact information for those people is super easy, even if all they give us is a company name. And the nice thing about the getting the names of the products that have been spec'd from the architects is that those become a greater value license because they're advertising licenses. So if it's, say, a roofing company or a metal cladding company or even paint or something like that, those licenses can be really lucrative.
Yeah, you just got to be disciplined to get that out there soon after the shoot, stay in front of people, almost like you put somebody else, one of your admin on charge of that, putting that together. That helps.
Well, yeah. And what I do is when I send out that email, I say that there's a 7-day window on that I need to hear back, that the pricing, the licensing that I've offered, and I offer a discount for multi-party licensing. if they do it within those 7 days. And then I also say, here's the prices. If you don't do it within the 7 days, it reverts to my customary licensing. And it's way more money. So there's an incentive to, because I used to get the pushback of, well, we may only want 5 or 6. Well, those 5 or 6 images, if you wait till after the 7 days, it's going to cost you more than if you licensed the entire package in the 7 days. So,
I was going to say I do something similar. I just ask people to commit prior to the photo shoot, and then after the photo shoot, it's my standard licensing fee. And so that's sometimes I mean, that makes a huge difference in the. Also, I normally have to do more work finding people after a shoot versus the client saying, "Hell, here's 3 people that want to join us right now."
yeah, I try to have all that nailed down ahead of time as well. It's a little hard, I find, to get commitments because people want to see the images unless they know your work. So if it's somebody that's never licensed your images before, then it's a little bit difficult for them to say, yeah, we're on board. If it's somebody that's licensed your stuff before, then it's an easy one. But so that's why I give them that 7 day grace period afterward.
I try to get all my stakeholders lined up too, Matt, ahead of time. But sometimes, like a good client, a contractor of mine, he wants to go ahead, and the architect can't make up his mind, and the engineer can't make up his mind. So I go ahead with the price that just one stakeholder would get, and then so that they don't lose incentive for one more month after I've shot. If they still bring forward the architect and the engineer and some more people, then I will give them a good rate, but I also give a refund to my initial client for having. It's kind of like I guess, a bonus or a reward for bringing in work. But my main clients, the good ones, they know that even afterwards they can bring some stakeholders to bear, and they're going to get a refund. Not much of one, but they get some. So. Another thing that, since most of my clients are architects and general contractors, I've gone on websites of other general contractors and architects, my prospects, and I see some real junky photography on there. And so I contact them and I say, unlike you, Alan, I'll do a free consult to come in and go over all their work and figure out how we could get the most economical photography for them to build a decent website. Because I'll do what I call drive-by shootings. If all they want is one exterior picture of the car dealership and one interior picture, I can just, when I'm in the neighborhood, take those 2 pictures and not going to charge anywhere near a full shoot for all the inside, all the outside of a building. And so sometimes I'll get 3 or 4 new buildings in the whole shoot and match. I'll get, they'll look at my work I've already done for other people, and they'll buy photos from me of another 5 projects, and they'll give me a dozen projects to go do drive-by shootings. And that makes for a nice amount of work. Now, you're not going to usually get that on a real classy building, but it's not bad work.
So how successful are you calling on architects with crappy photos? How often do they want to do an upgrade like that?
About half and half. Sometimes, really about half of the time they want to do at least some upgrade, and about half the time they are just crappy architects with crappy websites, and they're happy to be crappy the rest of their life. So, and I don't work hard, for me, it's a simple matter of, hey, I was looking at your website, thought that maybe I could help you improve that. If you want to talk about what we could do as a whole photography package, I'd love to do it. And if they bite, great. And if they don't, I'm never calling them back again. It's not like, oh yeah, they'll think about it and I'll call them 10 times. Nah, just once and done. Boom.
Mhm.
Good idea. That's great.
I have a question for y'all. I have one client, an architectural firm that's used me, 2 or 3 times a year for about 10 years now, and they pay whatever I ask them to pay. I don't even give them a quote before the assignment. I'll just send them a bill and they pay it right away.
What's the name of that architectural firm?
Yeah. Could we all call on
How
that
does
firm?
that work?
Yeah.
Would you like to share them?
Interesting. You asked, Brian. They're in your neighborhood, actually. Yeah. So then, like one time, 3 months later, they get word, hey, those photos that you did on such and such a house is going to be featured in, the city magazine, so if you don't have an agreement with the publication that wants to run these photos, I mean, it would be heartbreaking to the architect, right? If you say, well, sorry, they can't use those photos because they're not going to pay me what I want. And so what do you do in that situation?
Yeah, that's a tough one because the magazines have editorial fees that they're used to paying, but they will try to stiff a photographer wherever they can. Their magazines are just notorious for doing that, for saying, we'll give you a photo credit, and not pay you an editorial fee. And so my tactic has always been, my editorial fee for those photos is such and such. But it's a fine line because you don't want to burn the bridge with the architect. And they kind of, and then, if it's an advertorial, then it's even worse.
But the bottom line is they're making money off of our photos. And some of these magazines don't want to pay. Some of the higher end, they pay great, like a Lux magazine. But, well, Matt's in town here in Oregon. Oregon Home Magazine, I've been shooting. Back in the day, they paid a decent rate, but now they say, oh, we can't afford to pay. Well, and this Gray magazine out of Seattle, so we can't afford to pay. But they use the photos, and the client wants to get published, so you can't say no because your client's going to get upset with you. So,
even some of the big publications, just they don't pay much at all. I mean, New York Times pays me $500, which I think is just criminal. But that's.
But again, they're going to find somebody else to do it for that rate. They're going to find somebody else to do it for that rate.
They are.
Yeah, so this would be an area where I think I don't have sufficient knowledge because my license says if you're marketing your business, your license is good for you. If the magazine's trying to use it for some other reason and they just want to throw that image in, then they need to talk to me. That's kind of my rule of thumb. Like as long as they're marketing the business I shot for, it's free game. And I don't know if that's the best way. That's just how I've done it so far. So
yeah, my license says that editorial fees are payable to the photographer, and there's a lot of magazines that will just do everything they can to get out of paying an editorial fee. I don't know why that is, but even the most, what you'd think are reputable magazines will try to get out of paying an editorial fee, even if it's only just a few $100s.
how do you view a magazine versus a social media company?
Yeah, like for instance, on that, I'm not sure what you mean.
Print publication.
Print versus digital publications, yeah.
We usually get more money for print for sure, and it depends
absolutely
on the size of the company.
Yeah,
the print.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of experience with digital only publications. I know that I've gone after a few for infringements. In fact, I've got several. I think I've got 5 active cases right now for digital only publications.
So one example I had is my Pixie found it was kind of like a trade magazine of sorts, and I initially went after them because they were using my photos with no clear reference to the client that I shot for, and it wasn't advertising my client. And then when I found out, like my client sent them the photos, that's another issue. But I'm like, oh, like they just weren't advertising my client. So that was where for me it was a red flag. It's like you have to advertise my client. You can't just use the photo.
Yeah, and
For me, that was
that's really typical. They will just kind of dump the photographs into their library and then use them willy-nilly, on their in their publication. There's several trade magazines that I've had big issues with, and I've actually lost clients over because I've just said no, and absolutely hell no, that's not going to happen. You can't do that, because they were using them. I mean, one of them was I got this image back of this trade show booth in Las Vegas for the trade publication with my image as the big trade, banner on the back of their trade show booth. So yeah, I don't know. Anyway, that didn't answer your question, Greg. I'm sorry.
Well, back in the day when stock photography was a little bit more lucrative, I would shoot for a magazine and then get the homeowner to sign a release and then use those photos for stock. And I'm still involved in stock, but it's not what it used to be. We've talked about it in the past, but that's how I make some extra money.
I wonder if that, is going to come around as AI becomes more obvious. I mean, the stuff I see AI now is so obviously AI. I wonder if reasonable, realistic photography is going to have a resurgence or something.
Well, it's hard to say because right now Getty's in the process of acquiring Shutterstock, and then Adobe's doing okay. Some with Adobe, Shutterstock, iStock, and Getty. There used to be quite a few more.
Stock fees have just plummeted. That, David. I mean, 20 years ago, you could get $1,500 for an image that you get 50 for now. So,
but it still works. You're still making money off of it. So anyway, that's a whole other discussion. But as far as making money off of secondary market, so to speak, you can do that with some shoots.
I will say, kind of circling back, this is not really a stock related, but the fact that I use Pixie Set and post my projects there and then have the name of the project and the location. I have people actually that will search online and those get indexed at Google. And I will have people that will search and find those projects on Pixie Set, contact me for licensing. And so just recently, over the summer, I've probably licensed 6 projects with a substantial licensing fee, just because people found them by just doing an organic search on Google that took them to my Pixie Set posting.
Did you have to do something on Pixie Set to get that to be noticed?
No, it's just I just had to. I think just in the description. I think there's a checkbox that you say put it on the home page and make it searchable. I think that's all you have to do.
Yeah, the description is key because the search is. I just listened to a really interesting NPR profile on the visual AI levels that are coming into play that are using the visual information that will become searchable. But now, up until now, and for however long it takes them to get it together, you have to have the words, the description accompany that to be searchable. So that the searchable words and the description of your photos on Pixie Set or whatever is key to being found.
Okay. Great information.
Yeah, that has been, I mean, I would say at the end of the year, that's probably going to account for 20% of my income this year. People just finding images on Pixie Set and licensing those projects. So substantial. And it was completely accidental as far as my marketing. I didn't do that intentionally.
Alan, can you talk a little bit about how extensive your description is? Is it the name of the project, the location, the dates? I mean, the architect. What all do you put in the description?
It's not very extensive at all. It's just the name
Okay.
of the project and the location.
Okay.
But it's a pretty. I make sure that I put the name as complete as possible, and then the city and the state, and say like I just put one on here, which was a high school football stadium in Texas, which was on par with some NFL stadiums, but I put the name of the high school and the school district and then the city, and that was enough to draw people to it right away. And then I had some previous to that, which were tilt-up concrete buildings, and in the Bay Area and stuff like that, and architects who were involved in it. I shot it for a construction company, but architects involved in these projects then found them on Pixieset just because I put the name of the building and the location and all that kind of stuff. And kind of fascinating to me.
And that reminds me of something I did this past year intentionally. I post regularly on social media, and my website has a blog feature which I had never used. But about a year ago, I was like, I'm already doing this work to post this stuff on social media. So I literally just copy and paste what I'm doing on social media and post it on a blog post on my website. And I've been seeing that attract more traffic, more leads come in as people see. And I think it's because I'm feeding the algorithms. And so search, it's helping my site rise in search. And so it's for me, it was something I'm already doing, and it was like, well, it's not that hard to add one more place to I'm saying the same thing. It's nothing different. It's just instead of pushing people to Instagram or Facebook, it's pushing people to my website. So
That's a great point, Matt. One of my buddies, Brian Rupp, a photographer out of Boise, we talk about every couple of months, and he's totally into the blogging on his website. He says it's just me. I just can't find the time, but he says, David, you got to do the blogging. So you're right in the right track, Matt.
And I minimal time because I have a lot of other things going on, but it's like I'm doing a social media post regularly, so it's like
That's great.
copy paste.
Keep it up.
Can you just take a Facebook post and put it up in your website as a blog?
I do. I mean, I clean it up a little. So like I start with Facebook and then I screenshot all the images from there just so that they're lower because I don't even want to spend time opening Photoshop and reformatting them. And then I drop the images in, I drop the language in, and I remove the hashtags and links from Facebook, and I'll do an official link to those different companies from my page. So there's a little bit of time, but I'm not recreating something new. I've already created that post and then just copy paste, put it over, clean it up, and let it go.
Explored some really good information today. This has been really useful. Thanks for all the input that you've given and have been so gracious in sharing with us today. This will be online probably within a week's time if you want to re-listen to it. And I hope that you all have an exceptional Labor Day holiday and stay safe during this upcoming hurricane season. Those of you who are in the Carolinas and elsewhere that might experience some severe weather. And again, thank you for being on this broadcast, and we hope to see you again next month.
This has been another episode of A Photographer's Life. If you've enjoyed this program, please let us know by liking this episode and subscribing to this channel. A Photographer's Life is brought to you by the Association of Independent Architectural Photographers. This episode is copyrighted and may not be used in full or in part without the written permission of the AIAP. Please join us again soon for another inside look at the world of professional architectural photography.